Hello, BookTube. Well, the forecasts were right. Boston is getting snow. Heavy, wet, fast-falling snow is coming out outside the windows of Hyde Cottage. Quite lovely, throwing a very off light uh, in through the windows. It's going to create a problem a little bit later on. It's the fact that I'm done with these videos because the bean has to go out. My little schnauzer has to go out, and she's tiny. The snow's already up to her shoulders. And also, something about schnauzer hair causes fresh snow to clump on it in little white marbles that are really hard to dislodge. But you have to dislodge them, because if you don't, then you've got a dog walking around the house with booties made of ice that then melt all over the place. So that she hops up on her favorite bed or on my favorite bed, tucks her paws underneath her, and suddenly she's in a little pool of ice water. So they have to get rid of them right away. Uh, but we'll deal with that when we're done with this. I have some mail. The forecast about the snow were right, but my forecast about whether or not there'd be ninja mail was wrong. Um, I did get mail, ninja mail. I got mail yesterday, but so late in the day that I didn't know it was there. I would not have encountered it at all. I might not have encountered it today. It might have got buried in the snow. But my surly houseboy plucked it off the front porch, and here it is. So we have a bunch of books to go through. And this is a rare instance. BookTube, you can mark this on your calendar. This is a rare instance where I am refilming something. And you'll thank me later. Because the first book that I opened, the very first book in this pile, had one tiny little detail in it that set me off on camera on a rant that when I finally came up for air, it had been 40 minutes of me ranting about that one little detail, which is not fair to you. It's not fair to the author of the book. It's not fair to people who actually have socially progressive mind frame or ideas or wishes for society. It's not fair to anybody, except maybe me, because old coots do like their rants. So I actually stopped the video and am starting over. And that is why the first book I want to show you, I'm not taking out of package. And the same thing is true for the second book. I took the second book, I opened the second book's package, and then realized, no, you can't leave that in there like a great carbuncle on the video. So we're going to go through this first book again, and I'm going to control myself. This is The Black-Tongued Thief by Christopher Buehlman, with a rather interesting cover that has only a couple of colors. It's not the usual blast of Technicolor that high fantasy novels tend to have. I don't know if this is the advanced copy. This comes out in late May. I don't know if the finished copy will have that cover overlay or not. We shall see. But I want to tell you about this, only without the rant. So this stars a character named Kinch, and Kinch owes to the Takers Guild a small fortune for his education as a thief, which includes, but is not limited to, lockpicking, knife fighting, wall scaling, fall breaking, lie weaving, trap making, plus a few small magics. Kinch finds his fate entangled with Galva, a knight and a survivor of the brutal Goblin Wars, searching for her missing queen. Common enemies and uncommon dangers force thief and knight on an epic journey where goblins hunger for human flesh, krakens hunt in dark waters, and honor is a luxury few can afford. So a fairly standard by-the-numbers high fantasy, but it could be done really well. As I said in that earlier, now lost video, it could be done really well. We have all seen, those of you who read fantasy novels have all read something that would fit that description, move around the proper nouns, and that's all, to find things that fit that description. So the whole thing will come down to Christopher Buehlman and his writing, and that prompted me to go to his biography, and that is where we hit trouble. And we're not going to hit it this time, because I have the ability to control myself. We'll go over a little bit of his biography. His biography starts off with Christopher Buehlman, and then in parentheses, he/him. And I was off to the races after that. Off to the races. And now I'm not going to be. He is an author, comedian, and screenwriter from St. Petersburg, Florida. He's written novels that include Those Across the River and The Suicide Motor Club, and he's also written plays. And he tours the country most years, writing and performing at Renaissance festivals, which makes him sound pretty likable. He and his wife travel with their rescue dog, Duck, and a black cat named Jane Mansfield, who is proficient at ninjutsu. And he is on Twitter. And at some point in my froth-flecked rant about toxic social justice warriors in the deleted version of this video, I mentioned that since he includes he/him after his name in his author bio, he really didn't need to specify that he's on Twitter. But I'm not going to do any more than that. We're not going to do a bit more than that. We're just going to move on. I mentioned, for instance, in one of the non-ranty comments about this, that it's kind of interesting that the goblins eat people, since the nondescript hordes of evil bad guys in most high fantasies might want to kill you, they might want to despoil you, but even Tolkien scarcely makes it, he only occasionally makes it even semi-explicit that these nondescript bad guy hordes want to eat you. So that's kind of interesting. But again, the template is completely known to us, right? To anybody who reads fantasy has heard that template before. So the whole key here will be how well it's done. I'm eager to see. It doesn't come out until late May, so I probably won't see right away. But I will report back, and we will see. It's going to be a $25 thereabouts hardcover in May. And then we get to this next one. This is the next one that I opened, and it was only when I opened it that I realized, no, you can't just move on from those 40 minutes. You have to stop this video and start again. So I got a glance at what's in here, but I haven't looked it over. And the glance was extremely encouraging. This is an extremely known quantity. This is Steven Pressfield, and this is A Man at Arms. Lovely, lovely cover. This is the author of, I don't know if you can make it out there, right? Gates of Fire. He wrote a book about Thermopylae called Gates of Fire that is still a huge success, just a huge success as a novel. It's also tremendously good. He's written lots of other novels, but Gates of Fire took off, including, it has, in addition to all of the normal civilian fans it also has endless numbers of active military fans. There's scarcely an army base, I'm told, there's scarcely an army base anywhere in the world, a U.S. army base anywhere in the world where you can't find dog-eared copies of that book that are passed around. There's always somebody reading it, or more than somebody reading it. That's a particular talent. I could see it when I read Gates of Fire, and I have it. I'm going to reread it, probably before I read this thing. I definitely saw that, something of why that would be true in that novel. So what have we got here? This comes out in early March the 2nd, from W.W. Norton, one of my favorite non-Penguin publishers. And it has blurbs from Jack Carr, who writes military thrillers that you shouldn't miss. I'm a recent convert to them, but you shouldn't miss them. Also has a starred review from Kirkus Reviews, and a blurb from General Mattis. Yeah, it has a blurb from General Mattis. Okay. All right, he is a U.S. Marines retired, and he was the 26th Secretary of Defense, and there's going to be a line in all fair biographies that are ever written of him that darkens his name and soils his reputation because of his association with Donald Trump and unwillingness to call out what he saw, unwillingness to warn the public, which is his foremost duty. But you see how close we are to verging into another video I have to delete. We're not going to do that. We're not going to do that. Jim Mattis can read a book and recommend it, same as anybody else. But that's all this gives me. This doesn't give me, well, we'll read from the jacket here what this is about. Because as you can see, as you can tell, this is not going to be ancient Greece. This is going to be ancient Rome. Jerusalem and the Sinai Desert, 1st century A.D. In the turbulent aftermath of the crucifixion of Jesus, officers of the Roman Empire acquire intelligence of a pilgrim bearing an incendiary letter from a religious fanatic to insurrectionists in Corinth. The contents of this letter could bring down the empire. The Romans hire a former legionary, the soldier-at-arms Telamon of Arcadia, to intercept the letter and capture its courier. Telamon operates by a dark code all his own, with no room for noble causes or lofty beliefs. But once he overtakes the courier, something happens that neither he nor the empire could have predicted. In his first novel of the ancient world in 13 years, the best-selling author of Gates of Fire and Tides of War returns with a gripping saga of conquest, rebellion, bloodshed, and faith. Okay. So what is the date? What is the? Oh my goodness gracious! It has a quote. One of the opening epigraphs is from the book, the 1 Corinthians. So, but when is this taking place? Does it actually tell us? Does it actually say? During a period in the final years of the reign of the Emperor Claudius, the Imperial Roman cavalry made regular patrols of this point of peril. So is that where we are? No? But when the revolt of the Hebrew zealots began establishing itself in earnest in the months immediately preceding the secession of the new Roman Emperor Nero, the Romans no longer ventured so far from their fortress at Jerusalem. Okay, so is this taking place in the reign of Nero? A local youth named David, son of Eli, aged 14, unlettered but of sturdy limb and abundant ambition, chanced to find himself upon this site on a certain eve in the Hebrew month of Tishrei, the Roman October, in what would come to be called Anno Domini, the year of our Lord, 55. David had come out with 2 friends of his village to watch the morning's ambush. Okay, so this I'm not quite sure, but it looks like the 10th Legion is stationed, so it's probably in the time of Nero, or shortly thereafter, right after that. In which case, I have no idea what the religious fanatics could be, or the insurrection that threatens the power of Corinth. Certainly couldn't have been the Christians, but maybe the author is going to say that it was. I'm on this author's side, anyway, because I've read a number of his books, and even if I hadn't, even if I've only read Gates of Fire, that would be enough. He's one of those authors. That's one of those books. That would be enough. So this comes out in early March. I'll get to it right away. In fact, let me set it aside here. I'll read it today. As the snow falls. So let's move on. That's great. So we have high fantasy and historical fiction. That's great. Let's see here. Okay, this next one has a veritable book attached to it. Such a tiny little thing. This is from Other Press, and it comes out at the end of this month, the end of February. It's a novel, even though it's this small. It's called In the Company of Men by Veronique Tadjo. Veronique Tadjo, is this translated? Oh, nice. It's got the French flaps there. Very nice. Yes, it's translated in collaboration with the author by John Cullen, whose name I think has come up before in talking about translations. In the Company of Men. So what have we got here? Full blurb from Publishers Weekly. A full blurb from Booklist. Goodness gracious. Lots and lots of blurbs for this thing. Great. Okay. So it struck a lot of people well. But we also do know about it. So this is going to be a paperback original. It's going to look just like this. It's going to be $15, and it's coming out at the end of the month. Inspired by and drawing on real accounts of the Ebola outbreak that devastated West Africa between 2014 and 2016, Ivorian writer Veronique Tadjo, Veronique Tadjo was not inspired by the Ebola outbreak. That's not. I know it's the most common mistake in the world, but that's not how English works. That's if you start with a phrase like that, the next thing in the sentence has to be the thing to which that phrase applies. Otherwise, it's the dangler. In this case, a disastrous one, because you're saying that the author was born of plague, was born of massacre. But anyway, the author weaves fact and fable in her new novel, fashioned from the canon of traditional oral literature from Africa. Here, the author imagines ground zero of the Ebola epidemic, focusing on the resilience of the people and the courage it took so many individuals at a national, regional, and international level to put an end to the epidemic. The courage it took so many individuals is wrong, and epidemic is twice in that sentence. Okay, well, let's just move on. The pub sheet is not the book. We know that already, right? You're as an old hand at these things as I am by now. The pub sheet is not the book. We'll just plow on here. Maybe somebody was hungover. Given the present threat of COVID-19, it's at once eerily urgent and timely, while also timeless as myth. What is the epidemic? The book? What is it? It. Okay. All right. The previous sentence doesn't have a mention of the novel. We have to go back. Okay. Anyway, we're going to assume that it's the novel. The novel is at once eerily urgent and timely, while also timeless as myth, rather than Ebola. We're going to assume that. This inventive novel of connected vignettes is made richer with interwoven material, ranging from song lyrics and scientific facts to poetry and folk tales. It would appeal to fans of Namwali Serpel's The Old Drift. I'm not one of them, but hopefully it'll have something in it for me as well. And Chingozi Obioma's An Orchestra of Minorities. I didn't like The Old Drift. I actively hated an orchestra of minorities, so we're not doing well. And Daniel Defoe's A Journal of the Plague Year. What? Okay, all right. Well, I am a fan of that. So, already a success. Oh, that I just wish. I wish that those three books together didn't so clearly draw up an immediate picture in the mind of the writer of this pub sheet just Googling books about diseases. I wish that weren't true. I really wish that Defoe doesn't belong on that list. At the very least, The Plague by Camus, but not Defoe. But anyway, already a success in France. Other Press is excited to. Okay, Other Press is not already a success in France. You mean this book is already a success in France? So you know, to put it in explicit terms, let's rework this sentence so that it isn't a mistake. The sentence reads, already a success in France, Other Press is excited to introduce In the Company of Men to U.S. readers. It's easy to rework that sentence so that it is not wrong. You just change it to, In the Company of Men, already a success in France, is here introduced to U.S. readers by Other Press, or proudly introduced to readers by Other Press. That introduces the passive tense, but who cares? At least it makes sense. At least then the participle is referring to its referent instead of just dangling in midair, or referring to something wrong. Other Press is not a success, already a success in France. That's not what the author intended. Anyway, let's just move on, shall we? Instead of being grammar cops. A masterful storyteller, the author brings together a chorus of voices that gives shape to the causes and consequences of the crisis. Beginning with two village boys who venture from their village, that's village twice, to hunt in a nearby forest where they shoot down bats with glee, presumably they use arrows, and cook their prey over an open fire. Okay, all right. Beginning with two village boys who venture from their village to hunt in a nearby forest where they shoot down bats with glee and cook their prey over an open fire is not a sentence. That is not a complete sentence. The entire apparatus of the phrases that begin with beginning is operating as one huge multi-word adverb to describe something else. And in this case, the writer of the sentence got lost in the verbiage and forgot to add the something else. So there's just description here. That's not a complete sentence. Well, let's move on. Within a month, they are dead. Bodies ravaged by an insidious disease that neither the local healer's potions nor the medical team's treatments can cure. Okay, the local healer and the medical team's treatments would not be practiced on two dead bodies. Compounding the family's grief, experts warn against touching the sick. But this caution comes too late. The virus spreads rapidly, and the boy's father is barely able to send his eldest daughter away for a chance at survival. The novel unspools to reveal the perspectives of myriad human and non-human characters. I would hope that you don't mean the novel unspools. Unfolds is probably what you mean. The reader here, although I'm intrigued by that non-human characters. Who will the non-human characters be? The idea that Veronique Tadjo would think to narrate any of this book from the perspective of Ebola is too much to hope for. That will not happen. So will it be the bats, village cattle, something like that? I don't know. I'll have to read it to find out. The reader hears from healthcare workers on the front line of the epidemic, rendered otherworldly by their foreign protective equipment. A man who communicates with his fiancée through poetry when she is separated from him at a hospital. The sagacious baobab tree, oh, there we go, it's a tree, who warns of the dangers of climate change. And Ebola itself, son of a gun, I was wrong. The author did think to do that. A sardonic, centuries-old scourge. So we do. Part of this is narrated by Ebola. Fascinating. At its heart, In the Company of Men is about the sustaining power of stories and their reminder that we are never alone in our suffering. I'll bet you a Boston cream pie that is not true. I'll bet you a Boston cream pie that at its heart, this book is not about the sustaining power of stories and their reminder that we are never alone in our suffering. I'd be willing to bet that dozens of people, characters, human and non, suffer alone in this book. But we'll see. Again, this is just the pub sheet. A particularly rocky one, I may add. They aren't usually like this. As we continue to face one of the worst global health crises in modern history, the author offers a necessary balm against fear and despair. Balm? Here we a bomb around a baby? Sorry, BALM is what it means. I just can't get Monty Python's The Life of Brian out of my head for more than a few seconds at a time. Won't you bring a bomb around a baby? What do you see? He's a Capricorn. Oh, what are they like? He's the Prince of Peace. He's the Lord. He's the Messiah. Oh, so that's Capricorn, is it? No, that's just him. Okay, let's focus. And all of you in the cheap seats are saying, we're perfectly focused. You're the one who can't control yourself. All right, well, should we learn about the author, or is that pushing our luck? Is that pushing our luck? Maybe we should just dispense with this book for now, and I'll just get on to reading it, because it's out in a week or two, so, and it's a tiny thing. It'll take 15 minutes to read. So the author is a writer, a poet, a novelist, and an artist from the Ivory Coast. She earned a doctorate in Black American literature and civilization from the Sorbonne, and went to the United States as a Fulbright scholar at Howard University in Washington, D.C. She headed the French department at the University of Witwatersrand and Johannesburg up until 2015. Her books have been translated into several languages, and it looks like she's written a lot of books. Oh, son of a gun. Son of a gun. Wow, I haven't seen this in so long. Look at this. This pub sheet actually includes tour dates. Actual tour dates. These are things where she's going to be talking with people at various universities. That's amazing. How on earth? Brooklyn, Cambridge, San Francisco, Richmond, Seattle, St. Louis, Toronto. It's just an old style 2019 book tour. Is that just wishful thinking? Is that just someone saying, well, by the time we get around to this, the plague will be under such, our own COVID-19 will be under such control that it'll be possible? Of course, that's not true. Half the cities on this list won't allow a book reading or a gathering like this to happen. I wonder if these are virtual and it's just not saying so. Okay, well, I'll have to look it up and see. It doesn't really concern me. There are booktubers out there who do go to author events and author signings and things like that, and I love it. I love seeing that. I envied that in a way, in a weird kind of way. I envied that even before COVID-19. I envied the booktubers who do that, and then best of all, come back and share the experience with us. That's just incredible. I have never really done that myself, for a number of reasons, not least of which because I share the attitude that is present in a lot of book critics of not wanting to get too chummy with authors, right? Because you're the white blood cells between them and your readers. So you don't want to get too chummy with them. You don't want to have a great time, drinking wine with some author after an event somewhere where you've gone to get an autograph, and you reminisce about your childhood and you talk about your father experiences, and then 2 months later you get that person's next book and it's crap. You don't want to at that point say, well, I really want to do the author the favor of a review, and I don't want to be a negative review, so maybe I should. You don't ever, if you're a reviewer, you don't want ever anything to dilute your first and only duty, which is to your readers. So I tended not to do that. Also, in events like that, unless you know the author and can hang out right afterwards, there tends to be a lot of dead time, a lot of downtime that I just automatically think could be better spent reading. And that's odd for me to think, because I've had a lot of happy experiences from being at events like that and talking with authors like that. But I'm going to have to look into that a little more and see if this author actually does plan to have a brick and mortar walk into the room book tour. Just saying it, even now in February of 2021, it seems like something that people did in ye olden days. It seems like something that just would never happen anymore. Any more than a crowded nightclub or a crammed restaurant. They seem like things from the past, things that aren't coming back ever. So that's I wonder when. But the author is really prolific. I wonder when this book came out. This book, I'm gathering, came out in French. Yes, it did. It came out in French in 2017, and it's a slim little thing, and it's all about the ravages of Ebola. So there's our author. Like, some people know how to take an author photo, right? Can you imagine what mine would look like? That is someone you want to read, whose stories you want to hear. Okay, great. All right, so a slim novel, and one that's coming right up. let's push on here. let's push on. Let's try and forget that pub sheet and concentrate on the book, because the book itself sounds like it might be really interesting. The merging of the current fad in slim novels and slim made-up stories of having multiverse, it's like a chorus of narrators, merging that with African oral tradition and African storytelling rituals is clearly what, for instance, The Old Drift was trying to do. I just don't think it did it very well. I'm always up to see it done again. So let's see here. What's this next one? Oh, New York Review of Books. Okay, I've mentioned many times, New York Review of Books has a reprint line, and God bless them, because it's enormously popular with readers, and it's enormously adventurous, which is just what we want. That's just what you want in a reprint line. For people on their editorial board to be thinking, well, this hasn't had an English edition in a real long time, or I really like this thing. Can we hunt out who has the rights to it and maybe put out an edition of our own? They add new introductions to these things, and it's just a joy to behold. And I would have been singing its praises in every single video on this channel if I liked the books they pick, but I mostly don't. And by a staggering percentage, it's just a staggering percentage. It's like 95% of the titles that they pick are not ones that I would have picked. For every one Vasily Grossman, there are 100 like the book we have today. It leads me to believe that all the people on the picking board for their editorial superstructure were never students of mine, were never my boys. That can't be true, or they couldn't have wandered this far from the path. But anyway, here we're gonna go through this. This is Mohammed by Maxine Rodinson, with an afterword by Robert Irwin. Maxine Rodinson's Mohammed is one of the most important works on the history of Islam ever written, a highly influential and insightful text that examines and... Okay, we're not going to have a nightmare with a pub sheet again. That cannot possibly happen. The pub sheet spells insightful, I-N-C-I-T-E-F-U-L. In other words, inciting. There is no actual adjective for incite that is insightful. Is it instead inciting? So either the writer of this pub sheet is trying to be clever and come up with a neat neologism for inciting, or the author of this pub sheet thinks insightful, I-N-S-I-G-H-T-F-U-L, is spelled this way and no one caught it. I don't know which those are. I know one of them is preferable to the other, but let's just push on. Insightful text that examines the life of the prophet through the lens of the social and economic conditions into which he was born. Muhammad takes into account the specific historical juncture, the particular psychological makeup of a man who changed the world, placing the figure of Muhammad in a secular, comprehensive light for a broad readership. Now, in a new reissue, Anne Carter's translation of this classic work brings to life a narrative of a man of flesh and blood. The author, a historian and sociologist with a specialization in Islam and the Arabic world, begins his biography of the Prophet Muhammad at the macro level. Okay, you said secular, but you keep referring to him as a prophet. There are no prophets, but that's all right. That's entered the nomenclature. So the author paints a vivid picture of the life and times of the prophet, from his initial spiritual development to his dramatic rise to prominence. In constant conversation with both ancient and modern texts, this biography sets out to understand how Islam, as universal belief system not unlike Christianity or Buddhism, came to be not only a religious movement, but as a state and way of life for millions of people all around the world. Okay, so probably a lot of you are going to know this author better than I do, and I am wondering when this book originally came out, because I don't know. 1968. Does that sound right to those of you who might know this? 1968. Okay, great. Well, I don't at the moment have a biography of Muhammad, so there is one coming out, a great big thumping thing that's coming out probably in 2022. Great big huge thing in English that is a study of. There have been great studies about the history of the assemblage and creation of the Quran, but this is a biography, much like this. This is a biography of Muhammad that. We'll see if it comes to light. We'll see if it hits the light of day. But that is interesting. And then we have the last package, which is a tiny little thing. So let's see what we have here. Oh, it is a tiny little thing. All right. Okay, interesting. So this is from Sublunary Editions. Who publishes Sublunary Editions? Sublunary. Okay, I don't think I've ever got anything from this publisher before. This is due out in late May as an $18 paperback. This is A Cage for Every Child, a collection of stories by S.D. Krostowska. Tiny little thing. This is a mail haul for tiny little things. I don't think I've ever got anything from this publisher before. A hunter of giant worms is surprised by the sentience of their prey. A flower sprouting in the palm of a hand delivers bad news. In an unknown country, power is transferred in hypersensual ways. Whether fantastic or seemingly mundane, the 24 stories united in A Cage for Every Child. There are 24 stories in this thing. I can't say hello in this longer time. Unfold as uncanny encounters and brief sojourns in parallel worlds. Told in the author's slyly provocative style, each tale questions the stability of our reality and the meaning of our pursuits. And the author has two other books, The Eyelid, which Coach House Books brought out last year, and Permission, which came out in 2013 from Doughty Archive. So to put it mildly, not my type of book, but it sounds fascinating. I'm perfectly willing to give it a try. I don't know anything about the author. Once again, I will, as with a lot of these things, once again, I'll be deferring to you. Have you ever heard of this author? Have you ever read this author? This has not been, generally speaking, this has not been Steve territory as a mail haul goes. And that's what we have here. Really only one Steve book in the whole thing, and that's this thing, A Man at Arms by Stephen Pressfield. But then we have a 60-year-old biography of Muhammad, new from the great folks at the New York Review of Books. We have In the Company of Men, a slim multi-voice novel about Ebola. We have The Black Tongue Thief by Christopher Buehlman, a high fantasy coming out in a couple of months. And we have A Cage for Every Child by S.D. Krostowska, a collection of 24 short stories in this thing. There must be only a couple of pages each. So there you go. That is a decidedly weird, off-kilter, unpredictable Sunday mail haul. And the snow is coming down like crazy out there, but I have put off an outside excursion as long as I possibly can. I'm getting the hairy eyeball from my little dog, so I have to close these videos and venture outside. But anyway, I will wrap this up, but I will see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.